Well, if we've learned one thing about Marcus Freeman since he became the head coach of Notre Dame, is that he's really good at getting his team ready to play after an embarrassing loss, and that was on full display once again as the Irish dominated Purdue. From start to finish, my instant reaction is next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, and welcome into this instant reaction on Locked On Irish. My name is Tyler Wojciak, and I'm your host. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer at Fox Sports, and it is great to have you here right after Notre Dame just demolished Purdue by a final score of 66-7. Notre Dame dealt Purdue their worst defeat in school history just a week after Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. And I feel like when you look at this game, there's two ways of looking at it. There's one, the more optimistic outlook, where you just kind of appreciate everything that Notre Dame did on the field on Saturday. Or there's the other way of looking at it, and I'm not saying either one is necessarily right or wrong, but the more pessimistic way is looking at it and saying, how did this team managed to lose to Northern Illinois last week? And I understand if you feel even more frustrated about last Saturday because of the dominant effort that Notre Dame put together on Saturday. But today we are going to stay optimistic on this show because that was truly an outstanding performance by Notre Dame in all three phases of the game. They bounced back in a big way. And as I said in the cold open, this is the one thing that Marcus Freeman has demonstrated that he is really, really good at. He had Notre Dame ready to go after they had a very embarrassing loss last weekend, and they dominated from start to finish in this game. And there's a few things I want to get to today. I'm obviously going to go more in depth on this game throughout the coming week, but I wanted to give you my instant reaction to this game. And I honestly thought about doing this at halftime because Notre Dame went into the half with a 42-0 lead. But then I thought, if I did that, if I did an instant reaction at halftime of Notre Dame Purdue, even though they were up 42-0, they certainly would have blown that game and lost it. And then everyone would have been coming back here like, you're a moron. Why did you do that? You are the reason that Notre Dame lost. Well, fortunately, I did not do that. And Notre Dame ended up winning this game by a huge score. So let's just go through a couple of stats here that demonstrate the dominance that Notre Dame put on in this game. Notre Dame outgained Purdue 578 to 162. We saw Riley Leonard back in the game. He only played one half of football, finished with 112 passing yards and 100 rushing yards as well. Yeah, exactly 100. Jadarian Price got in there with 86 rushing yards as well. And Notre Dame clearly was going to run all over Purdue. That was what they did on the opening drive when Jeremiah Love broke the scoring open with a 48-yard touchdown run. And for all the complaints about Notre Dame not running the ball enough against Northern Illinois, well, they ran the ball all over Purdue in this one. They finished with 44 carries, 362 total rushing yards, 8.2 yards per carry, and 6 rushing touchdowns. Just truly a dominant effort by the Irish on the ground from beginning to end. In a game like this, I understand that people wanted to see Riley Leonard throw the ball downfield, but when you can run the ball at will on your opponent, you do that every single time. It is the safe way to go, and it's the way that Notre Dame played. So let's talk about Riley Leonard to start. He was really the talk of the town coming into this game because it looked like he was injured. In that game against Northern Illinois, there were all kinds of conflicting reports that came out this past week about the severity of that injury. Would he even play in this game? Well, guess what? He started, and he looked really good. He certainly looked healthy for the Irish at the beginning. He was running all over the Boilermakers, giving the ball, making the right decisions on the ground. And yes, there is the obvious note. Riley Leonard still has not thrown a touchdown pass through 3 games as the Notre Dame starting quarterback. We're going to get into the other quarterbacks, but I really want to start with Riley Leonard here because he looked really healthy. I don't know if it was just a bone bruise or what he was dealing with against Northern Illinois, but it was clear he wasn't dealing with anything against Purdue because he made some outstanding runs. There were a couple plays out there where you're like, oh, that's the guy that Notre Dame went out and got in the transfer portal, and it's everything that you wanted from Riley Leonard when he became the quarterback of Notre Dame. He had a couple runs there, like that touchdown run when he went to the left and then he broke 4 tackles on the play and then ran into a score. It looked like Purdue thought he went out of bounds. Personally, I thought he went out of bounds because the broadcast thought he went out of bounds, but the replay showed that he didn't. That was Cam Newton-esque. I'm not saying that Riley Leonard is as good as Cam Newton or anything close to that, but that looked like Cam Newton back when he was playing quarterback at Auburn. The way he shook off defenders, kept the play going, and he's sneaky fast, man. Like, I know that sometimes it can be a little bit frustrating when he pulls the ball early, tucks it, and runs it to try to get for the first down. But when he's running, like, it doesn't necessarily look like he's running that hard, but still, he manages to cover a lot of ground in a short period of time. So he finishes the game with 3 rushing touchdowns, 9.1 yards per carry, capped off with that 34-yard long touchdown run that I was just mentioning. And it was a really impressive performance by him. Yes, we still need to see more from Riley Leonard in the passing game. There's no doubt. But he seemed to be in a rhythm early. He was connecting on those short passes, specifically the out routes. Great to see Eli Raritan get involved, even though he only had 3 catches for 30 yards. That's more than he's done all year. So that was great to see. Mitchell Evans got in on the action as well with 3 catches for 27 yards. But Notre Dame tried to run the ball all over this team. That was the game plan, and it worked. So going forward, there's still going to be questions about Riley Leonard and his passing ability for good reason. I know there was that screenshot going around on Twitter where Riley Leonard tucks the ball and he's running to his right and there's a wide open receiver downfield. And look, I'm still going to be critical of Riley Leonard's passing ability, but I think that specific play, it's easy for us to criticize when you see the screenshot, but you have to recognize the context there. It was 3rd and 2, I believe, on the play. He was already rolling right. He could easily get the first down if he just runs the ball. I think by that point in his head, he had already committed to running the ball. So I'm not going to criticize him too much for that specific play because he got the first down, and I understand that Notre Dame fans really want to see him push the ball downfield, but in that game, it really wasn't necessary. Purdue was really, really bad. I mean, just almost impossibly bad. Like, I did not see a 66-7 final in my wildest dreams going into this game. So I was impressed by Riley Leonard as the runner. We still need to see more from him as a passer, but it looks like he might have some opportunities next week going up against Miami of Ohio as they struggled in their loss to Cincinnati today. So we still need to see more, but just happy for Riley Leonard to get out there, have some success after all the criticism that he dealt with over the course of the past week. So great performance by him. Let's talk about the backup quarterbacks because I joked that this was the funniest Notre Dame game of all time after Steve Angeli came in the game and immediately threw the first touchdown pass of the season on just his second play of the game. He hit Cooper Flanagan on the play-action pass, and of course you're thinking, oh, here it comes. Here comes the takes that Angeli needs to be the starter. And look, Angeli clearly looked better throwing the ball downfield. He hit Jaden Harrison on a beautiful slot fade in the game. And at this point, Steve Angeli has been the better passer for Notre Dame. Does that mean they need to go to him in the future? I don't think so. But if Angeli continues to make plays like that, I mean, he certainly needs to figure out how to throw the ball away. Steve Angeli does. I think that Notre Dame is going to feel comfortable putting Steve Angeli in the game if they need to pass the ball downfield. That is a bigger conversation that I'm sure we're going to touch on later on this week and honestly maybe throughout this season. But I was impressed with what Steve Angeli did in this game. 6 of 9 passing, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. Great performance by him. Kenny Minchie came in. He had a touchdown run as well, his first touchdown in Notre Dame uniform. And then at the very end, CJ Carr got it. And I joked on Twitter that all the YouTube commenters are going to rejoice once they see CJ Carr on the field. And it'd be kind of funny if you told me before this game happened that, hey, we're going to see CJ Carr play this game. I would think, oh, wow, things went really, really bad for Notre Dame. But it was actually quite the opposite. So every Notre Dame quarterback on scholarship got in the game today, and every single one played well when they were out there. Let's talk about that defense because they were absolutely dominant in this game. They held Purdue to 162 total yards, 124 passing, just 38 rushing yards, and it was great to see the defensive line and specifically that interior D-line between Riley Mills and Howard Cross just dominated Purdue from start to finish. And if the Notre Dame D-line can apply pressure like that, nobody's going to be moving the ball on this defense. Purdue is an air raid team. They tried to push the ball downfield, but Notre Dame's secondary is too good for them to allow that, and they showed that. Purdue went 1 of 12 on third down, and a big reason why is because they were in a lot of third and long situations, courtesy of that Notre Dame pass rush. So they were in the backfield all day. I'm pulling up the stats right now. Notre Dame finished with 4 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, 4 passes deflected. They had a couple picks, including a Bubakar Traore pick 6, which was great. So that was the defense that we all expected to see at the start of the season, and specifically on the line of scrimmage. They got pushed off the ball a little bit against Northern Illinois. They absolutely dominated the line of scrimmage today against Purdue, and they had nothing going all game. I couldn't believe that Purdue kept trotting out Hudson Card in this game. I felt bad for him at the end, man. He was getting crushed back there, and it was all kinds of different guys in the Notre Dame defense who were getting after him. I mean, even Kennedy Urlacher was getting in on the action there at the end. But Notre Dame's pass rush was great. They eliminated any chance of Purdue running the ball. So just a dominant effort from beginning to end for the Notre Dame defense. Kingston Viliamu-Asa got his first interception of his career, which was cool. Honestly, if he didn't get a shoestring tackle there, he probably returns that for a pick 6. Christian Gray dropped a pick 6. But overall, just a great performance from the Notre Dame starting defense and the Notre Dame backup defense, which played for the majority of the second half. Okay, one thing we have to address here, the one bit of bad news that came out today, the injuries. It felt like the first half was becoming a graveyard there for a little bit because Billy Schrouth, the Notre Dame starting right guard, went down, and immediately it was clear that he suffered a very serious injury to his leg. And then when he went in the locker room, he came out without his shoulder pads or anything. He was in crutches. My guess is that he's probably going to be out for the season. That's a big, big blow for the Notre Dame offensive line. Ashton Craig, another offensive lineman, Notre Dame starting center, went down later in the game with what also looked like a knee injury there. I don't know the severity yet. They didn't really mention it on the broadcast. That one did not look good either. Those are really, really important injuries for the Notre Dame offensive line, which was already dealing with the loss of their starting left tackle, Charles Jagasaw, at the start of the season. So for the majority of this game, Notre Dame was running out there with three linemen that were not starting at the beginning of fall camp. 3 of 5 were backups: Anthony Knapp, Pat Coogan, and Rocco Spindler. Now, the optimistic side would say that, hey, Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler both have experience, and that's true. Pat Coogan started every game last season for Notre Dame at guard. Now he's the backup center. So it's a good thing that Notre Dame had him become the backup center in preseason camp, because it looks like he might be seeing an extended amount of time as Notre Dame's starting center. Rocco Spindler came in at right guard. I thought he played well. So it looks like Notre Dame's offensive line is going to be playing with 3 guys who are not projected to start at the start of the season. Fortunately, 2 of them have experience. So we'll see if that line can sustain throughout the rest of the season, but those are 2 very big losses on the Notre Dame offensive line. I don't know how much that's going to impact them in the short term, but I think if you're thinking long term, I don't have a ton of faith in that offensive line because they were already struggling. So that really sucked. And also Jordan Botelho went down, non-contact injury, and that just is such a bummer. He was carted off the field, almost certainly out for the season, given the nature of the injury, given that it was non-contact, and considering he was carted off the field. I don't have high hopes that Jordan Botelho is going to play another game for Notre Dame this season. I guess there is the option, there is the potential for him to come back for his 6th year if he ends up medically redshirting this season. But just, it's such a bummer for him because he has had such a roller coaster of a career at Notre Dame, everything that he went through early on. And then it looked like he was finally figuring it out this season. He was the best defensive lineman on the field for Notre Dame when they beat Texas A&M. He had a sack in this game against Purdue. So for him to go down like that is just really, really disappointing. And Notre Dame's depth in the defensive line is going to be tested because Botelho is likely going to be out for the rest of the season. Josh Burnham is out with an ankle injury. We saw a lot more from R.J. Oben and then true freshman Bryce Young, who, by the way, literally killed a guy on that kickoff return. So there's going to be some more guys getting some action that otherwise probably wouldn't have. Notre Dame's recruited pretty well in the defensive line. They had some nice pieces there, but it's really unfortunate when you lose a starter. So there's a chance that coming out of this game, Notre Dame will be without 3 starters on both of their lines. 2 starting linemen out on offense, and then potentially 1 starting lineman out for the rest of the year on defense. That is definitely the biggest downside about this game. It obviously didn't affect the outcome against Purdue, but it is something to monitor the rest of the way. So that is the bad in a day that was pretty much all good for Notre Dame. Again, the Irish won 66-7, a dominant effort in all 3 phases of the game. Notre Dame even got they bounced back a little bit on special teams as well. Mitch Jeter made a field goal. I'd like to see a little bit more from James Rundell. Punting still been a struggle for the Irish so far this year. But then you had Max Hurlman out there returning punts, Jane Greathouse. There's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about this team going forward. They have Miami of Ohio next week. They should cruise to win in that one, but who knows, right? Because at this point with Marcus Freeman and this team, the one thing you can expect about this Notre Dame team is that you should not expect anything because anything can happen on a given week. But today we are going to celebrate the fact that Notre Dame won 66-7 against the Purdue Boilermakers. Got a lot more coverage about this game and the upcoming matchup against Miami of Ohio coming your way the rest of the week. I'm going to be back right here on Monday morning with my reaction, my more extensive recap of the Purdue game once I get a chance to rewatch it. Tuesday, Luke Smith is going to come on for the 3 things that we liked and we didn't like, although unlike last week, we're going to have a lot more to like about this game than dislike. And then after that, we'll start to shift gears to the Miami of Ohio game the rest of the season. So thanks for joining me here on this instant reaction piece. I'll see you Monday.